Hello, and welcome to The Forgotten King, an audio drama presented by Story Games. Let's tell a story.
Punching holes in the ice each morning was a custom in the north. Men that live in the castle started each day by breaking the world open, rising with the sun, working the muscles and the blood into the body, and stilling the mind. Gael knew about the custom and loathed it to an extent. He found the exercise to be brutal, but there was a clarity of thought that came from it that was impossible to deny. Coldor helped him out of bed each morning, sharpened Gael's ice saw to a fine edge, and plunged next to him for the excruciating time the discipline required. The water they dipped into was a stark blue. Brilliant and bold, it gleamed under the faces of the snowy mountains surrounding the castle, just outside its walls. The whole breadth of Dormouth was a masterpiece of lumber and stone, glass and spire. It had snow and ice on its peaks, and was proudly built into the side of a mountain overlooking a small province of cottages and road homes below. A cosy village below a boisterous castle. That morning, Gael had planned to meet with Coldor and his 4 head councilmen. In the north, they were called sub-kings, a blunt title for the position they held. These were men that handled the most important pillars of Dormouth's existence: trade, lumber, culture, and military. Each man was wildly different from the next and had expectations about how Coldor and the Frozen Crown should act in this time of crisis. Coldor had briefed Gael just after rising. "I am aware, brother by law, that my strength does not lie in clashing words with words. I'm much better suited to clashing swords with shields. My payment for saving your life is a simple request for a man of your renown. You pretty southern bastards always know how to read books and put words together, like men in Dormouth know how to split wood with axes and fell trees with saws. My forest, my castle, my home is under attack, Gael, and I need you to help me save it. These men you and I appointed sub-kings are displeased, and that's putting it mucking lightly. Shire bless me, I know you gave me the Frozen Crown because I can lead with honour. And I don't mince words, but leading a castle is politics too. It's listening and talking and sitting and drinking. I can feel my back getting stiff and my hands itching to swing a sword. Oh, it felt good to defend my home, Gael, against those turned savages from the broken city. It felt good to send them to Manon and save you with my sword and my shield. Now, I'm asking you to save my life, like I did yours. I'm just asking you to do it with words instead of swords. We'll meet with the sub-kings in the ice. It's the best place to sharpen your words, and listen to them wield theirs." Gael had made it his complete and utter focus to listen. Breathe and listen. Listen and breathe. The cold men talked decisively in the chilled, icy water in which they swam, breath misting as they spoke the truth to each other. It was a law in Dormouth. If you speak in the ice, you only speak truth. "You lie in the ice, you die in the ice," was a turn of tongue his father Odin had taught him as a boy. The southern boys mostly used the morning ritual as a practice in preventing yelps and squealing in front of royal blood. As an older man, Gael had done it enough that the practice made his mind crystal clear, hypersensitive. The lights in his mind were on. His ears were open. The men of Dormouth made their opinions clear about what they should do about Queen Aelin's absence. The Queen wasn't in Dormouth, Gael had come to learn. Coldor had briefed him the night before, after a hot bath and another hot meal. Gael's sister-in-law was displeased and had been missing for some time. The question was whether she was missing on purpose. As the gentle glow of the morning sun rose above their heads, Gael never said a word. He just listened and breathed. Listened and breathed. First was Sub-King Ronin, a strong, burly man, which was saying something in Dormouth. He was a bear, if a bear were to become a man. All shoulders and chest, belly and girth. Brown swatches of hair everywhere. Even his beard was wide. There was no hair on his head, and his legs were as big as Gael's plated chest armour. His shriveled manhood was the length of a dinner knife, and his personality was a perfect match. He was proud and arrogant, assured and headstrong. All aspects of a mind that Gael was accustomed to defeating in his training with his father. Odin had been a sincere scholar of negotiation, a master of its art. He had trained Gael and Rain since they were children in how to spot flaws or strengths in a person's position and how to rationalise it against their own. He understood that negotiation wasn't about winning at all. It was about positioning and helping both parties advance together. Slow, methodical posits, offering new points of view, wrestling with conflicting ideas, and above all, taking time to listen. That was the most important skill of all.
What Coldor knows to be true, but would never admit it to you unless he was in the ice, is we have a mocking army of war elks, siege weapons, shields and spears that amounts to the greatest force in Eldaron. Without a close second, I reckon. Strength in swords, that's what power stems from, and you know it, Gael. It's how we won the mocking war for Shire's sake. You know it, I know it, he mocking knows it.
Ronan brought his giant hand out of the frozen blue water and pointed a fat finger at Coldor.
I, for one, understood Aelin's position. Shire save us, if there is another turn in Gael, you know we'll need to act fast, mobilise our forces and act without hesitation. Last time, it took from mocking Heltermund to Haemon to get the Nerosians and Southgate to send a tenfold of men. We have the soldiers. We have the shields and the horses and the weapons to end things quickly this time. The power to say when to use that force should be ours, and ours alone. Not yours. You don't get to tell me what to do with my toys, Gael. I built them with my bare hands, some of them. You think we ever rested in the north after what we saw that day in the Haunted Hills? No, Gael, I'll not have my children seeing that. They're 11 now. Did you know that? Amarin and I were pregnant when we fought. We brought a baby into the world after all that death and blood had been spilled on it. When I looked in my son's eyes, I promised I'd never let him see anything like that again. And Gael, you muckin' know, if turning spill from that dead forest in the east again, the men in the north are the first to respond to it.
Ronan leaned back in the ice, letting his chest come up to the air and back again. He took a deep, hearty breath as Gael studied his eyes and watched how he bit his lips under his teeth.
You know our custom. You know I speak the truth to you, and take me, I'd tell you this to your face by a fire later if we got into it. He spat onto the ice to his right. I want your crown on his head, because the king with the power should be the king with the crown. We have the greatest power in Eldaron. I'll gladly show it to you when you're well. You likely don't remember a blink of what happened during the ice troll attack, but if you think a couple dozen villagers from Treedown and your half-bloodied vanguard are what saved you from death yesterday, you are sadly mistaken, King of the Arons. We are the force in the world now, Gael, one that has not existed before in the Second Age. You should know that, and you should think on it. We saved you, and only us could have done it. I know you got your fancy lightning and your blind old man who reads books and whispers words into spells, but weapons and horses and armour and shields and plate mail and spears, these are the tools that saved us on the field that day. Those and the cursed men who wielded them. We have both. I'm not asking you to give him your crown. I'm asking you to consider why you wouldn't. You saw it's already beginning. How many turned men and women did you kill? 100? More? It wasn't like the tens of thousands we fought back then, but it's a lot more turned than we've seen in the last 10 years. I'm angry, Gael. And Ailinn was too. We'd spend late nights talking about this, and Coldor stopped attending. Ronan splashed the icy water at Coldor. And that's on you, for choosing not to hear your own counsel, you handsome bastard. I did listen, just not late at night, when you were both drunk off mead and winterbite. That's fair. That is fair. Ronan burped and let a plume of bubbles rise from his bottom side. Point is, Ailinn understood the gravity of having the biggest army. Swords should dictate crowns. Ronan left the frozen water a short while later, after blabbering on about how strong and muscular the men in the north were compared to the rest of the men in Eldaron. Sub-King Halleck jumped in next. He was tall and chiselled, with skin as pale as birch bark. The looming hulk of a man dived in feet first and must have spent half the day in the beautiful blue blackness below the ice. His beard was as long as the braid that went down his back, his hair as red as fire. When he rose, he began to speak. What you either don't know or have forgotten about the North is that we control the greatest supply of wood in Eldaron, bar none. Most of the lumber from Greenlake is wet and sick with druid poisons and mushrooms. There are summer oaks, sure, but now I hear they're few and far between. It's mostly ferns and spruce, firs and scattered pines. The sunken marsh is inaccessible because of the muck and the bugs. The amber forest is sacred land to Shire above, and the woods from the base of the small mountains is thin and brittle, bristlebarks and thicket pines. Twigs do not build castles, King Gael of Arranor. I've been to the major cities of this world. In this age, at this time, no one builds without our lumber at their foundation. The very world on which we sit was built from our trees. The evergreens here are thick and thriving. Their roots are strong and deep. Gael, have you seen the ancient trees in Silvermist Forest? There are mountains worth of wood behind our keep, held by our people. The frozen men in the north possess the wood that makes the bed you sleep on, that holds up your walls, that braces your spears. Even your crown is made of wood, and it certainly does look strong on top of your head. I'm just not sure your head is the one it should be on. He dunked under the water again, just a quick bob in and out of the water. My truth stings, my king. It must. It's stinging my tongue as it passes my lips. Usually the deeper a truth hurts, the more true it is. That's a truth Ailinn and Coldor was stung by as well. Now it's your turn. Wood builds castles and crowns. Both should be ours. With that, Halleck rose from the square of frigid water and moved to another half-frozen square nearby. If Eldaron is a man, then commerce is the blood that runs in its veins, Sub-King Bolus said, bobbing into the ice bath. He was short, fat, bald, and angry. You know our taxes are too high. We've been discussing this for years. You have not taken nearly enough action in meeting our demands, and frankly, wounded king, I'm mucking over it. You have us pay taxes to fix roads we don't use. You want us to buy into a system of trade that we don't use near as much as the other kingdoms. And you do all this knowing we have the most valuable commodity in Eldaron, which I'm sure Halleck explained in detail prior to my arrival. Lower the mucking taxes, or we will war over it, Gael. I'm serious. It's that crippling. You think because you wear the crown, you should get to decide how our finances should work in the north, and that's a fallacy. It's a wrongdoing. Your father, Odin, and his father before him got that part wrong. Dormouth should be able to operate independently, decide our own regulations and taxations. I'll send anyone to Manon who thinks differently. That is a warning, King. A very direct one. You'd do well to listen. He slapped the ice like a toddler having a fit. Your little puppet Ilium heard right. You paid him well, I hope, because his whispers begot whispers, and not all whispers are lies. He knew the truth of it, without a plunge in the ice to help him, like you need. I don't like you, King. You think Your bank is bigger than ours, and that means you should get to decide what we do with our money. Well, muck that. Bolus really misses fighting. Coldor poked from the corner, lightening the mood a little. Let's me and you talk when we get out of the ice, Bolus continued. I'd like to pull out parchment and quill and look over the numbers with you in detail, so you can see the wounds you're causing. Boris left the ice and kicked a massive round man who was sitting naked on the ice like a blubbery beast of the Silver Coast. Sub-King Dobie came rolling over to the water and fell in without much grace or manners at all. He surfaced and grabbed the ice with one hand. It looked like Dobie couldn't swim, though his buoyancy was obvious. Greetings, King Aaron. My name is Dobie Helidon. I'm part of the Order of Tech that is responsible for scrolls and tomes and such, for Dormouth, responsible for its safekeeping and study. So my quarrel is with your kingdom, that I have voiced rather solidly with Queen Aelin and with King Coldor here, is that the Aaron family name is actually quite littered throughout history as being a name of ill fortune and undoing. That is to say, are you familiar with this mythology at all, King Gael? Most kings are not so well read, is why I'm asking, if you'll forgive the offence. Gael lifted his right shoulder out of the water a little and bent his neck to the side, pulling the tendons and cartilage between his ribs apart and setting them back together. He grunted at the pain, felt his bones crunching and grinding from the blunt force they had taken days prior. His back felt like it could give out at any second, but the cold ice was helping. Yes, my desire to part from our current relationship has literally nothing at all to do with the qualms of the other sub-kings, councilmen, have with your family. Nothing at all. I simply have read the texts and believe history repeats itself, and that what happened in the First Age is likely to happen in this age, and it will be spearheaded by your family, your children and your wife and your men. I do not wish to accuse. I want to be very clear about that. I am just voicing to you what the texts foretell. Your family, your line are doomed, King. And I'm terrified you will bring everyone down with us. Aelin believed in this prophecy. I explained it to her, and she understood. It was a relief, if I'm being honest. She left King Coldor because he denied this prophecy of old. It's what separated them, truth be told. Please think on this carefully, Aaron King. Your wife's sister, her blood. Arguably, the closest person Queen Aelin had in the world is someone that my queen denounced. Why would she do that? Why would a woman like Aelin ask her husband to denounce the Aarons and lay waste to your domain? You may think she has turned. I thought that myself for a time, but scrolls hold information from the past that were written down for a reason. It takes time to record major events of an age, whittled down over years and decades and hundred spans of time. The most important information lasts. The details do not blur, and what I have learned from my readings of the annals of the First Age is that your family, the Aarons, and your wife's family, the Lynns, are a disaster waiting to happen. I do wish you well, Southern King, and I hope my scrolls are wrong about their telling of the Second Age, but I do not wish to be near you when the castle walls start to fall. We all saw it happen with Nith. I believe it will happen to you next, and Dormouth is a well-fortified castle. We keep well in the north. I'd like you to keep well in the south. The words of the sub-kings bounced around in Gael's head like waves stuck between rocks in the frozen shores. All night, the words toiled and tumbled with each other, motivations and intentions, plotting and pride. These men were driven by heartfelt truths, and Gael was thankful they spoke truth to him in the frozen liquid shallows of the lake surrounding Dormouth. As he got dressed in his room later that morning, logs crackling in the hearth, Gael was worried that the web of arguments might be too much to navigate. Then Coldor shared word that his scouts had found Malar and Breya.
They were alive. His wife and his most trusted companion were alive and breathing, and it was as if Shire had heard his prayers crying out from the frozen stones in Dormith Castle. He had saved her, to be sure. There was no other explanation, and the feast he would throw in Malar's honour would be unparalleled. Once they were rested and recovered, and this matter with Dormith was resolved, all of Arrenhal would rejoice in the tale of Gael, Malar and Breya surviving the first ice troll attack in the history of the Second Age. Gael could hear the words to the ballads they would sing now, as he stared into the fire and finished dressing. His personal belongings and clothing were lost. Coldor had let him borrow furs and leather vestments till his strength had recovered and he could go home. They were bulky and heavy, but they fit well. There was a knock at his door.
"My king,"
Coldor announced from outside the room. "Come in, old friend." Gael rolled his shoulders and faced the door. "I've gotten word from the road about Breya and Malar that you need to hear." Coldor shut the door behind him and stepped close to Gael. "Are they in good health?" Gael could feel his heart sinking in his chest. Coldor's face looked pained. "They are. Both are unharmed." "Good. Thank you. Good." He felt better. "Though the nature in which they were found is significant." "Significant how?" "They were intimate." Coldor looked dead in the king's eyes, and a shard of ice fell into King Gael's burning heart. The frozen chair was made of dark, thick evergreen trunks, with wolf furs nailed into the wood on the back and sides. The ridgeline of the Frost Fang Mountains surrounding the keep was ornately carved into the beams. Coldor sat on the throne like a beast on top of a mountain. His council had stone and wood stools beside him, 2 on each side. The throne room was a cold, open space with a sky dome for the wind and the snow and the rain to come through. It was midday, and light snowflakes fell in from the ceiling as Gael pleaded with the men before him, addressing the great council of Dormith. "Your grievances are deserved, king and council. I was honoured to partake in your custom and hear your truths. In the south, in the east, in the other regions of Eldaron, truth is much harder to come by. It is often hidden behind smiles and handshakes, gifts and deceptions. Your customs did my body well, to be sure, but it rested my mind substantially and gave me the capacity to listen to your words. Hear me now. You are right to be wounded. I hear your pain. I see the damage that has fallen onto your kingdom. I acknowledge it was wholly without defense or doubt. Your pain is understood. I empathize with it deeply, and I am sorry for my part in its doing. If you don't hear anything else from me now, please hear that more than anything. I promised to rule with your best interest in mind, and I have failed you in that way. But you should also hear that you are wrong. Each of you and all of you have twisted the cause of your wounds to be something that you should attack rather than something that you should embrace." Gael took a deep breath and widened his stance. "Swords and shields do not win battles, Ronan. You don't have to be in the ice to know that. We win battles. Me and you, and him and him. I am the storm that rattles the castle in which we stand, and I am the end of all things if I need be. When men bleed together, we become one. And the fact that you have bigger swords than mine means you forgot that the arm holding the sword is what truly matters, and how deeply important the mind that controls the arm is to the position you claim, you burly muckin' brute of a boy. You're like a boy with toys in his room playing war, and I will not succumb to your fits or tantrums about how big your army is. Sir Halleck, I would build 10 castle on Summer Oaks before I built a single house on the cold timber of the Silver Mist.
The wood of my house is stronger than stone and deeper than the dirt of Eldaron itself. There are enough summer oaks in my forest to build a roof around your tiny frozen kingdom in the north, you arrogant bastard. The commodity you think you have is a barnyard snack for the livestock of the rest of Eldaron. Gael cracked his neck and stretched his side. He must have broken an ice troll's fall last night. And taxes are paid by all, to benefit all, Sub-King Bollis. Paid by all, for all. Not one for all, and all for one. You spit on the principles that allowed for this discussion to happen at all, and groan when you have to pay to be a part of the greatest time of prosperity in all the Second Age. Where do you get the fine spices to flavour the soups and meats that your chefs prepared for me today? Where does your metal come from? Are the best smiths here, in the north? Or does the best metal come from the forges in the belly of my castle, with blades as sharp and as strong as anything that exists in Eldaron? And if you threaten me or my family again, I'll be sure some of that steel stings your heart as sharply as Halleck claimed his truth would injure me. I'll end you before you know I've even considered ending you, you short, terrible cow of a man. And take Adobe. I have read the same scrolls that you casually decide to mention as if they speak of definite events to come. Yet you failed to mention any of the other prophecies that tell of blackness and death and riders and rain and poisonous noble blood rising from the east. My kingdom is the heart of Eldaron, the very heart of the world we all live in. It has been there for both ages. We all know that to be true. Why would that be true? Why would we be in the center of our land? Why did the elders make it so? Have you ever wondered that up here, in this frozen hell you call home? Our fires burn with wisdom, Doby Helidon, and honor, and strength, and justice. I decide the fate of my family, me, and my wife, and my sons, and my daughter. Not the scrolls, not the seers, not the whispers or rumours of men who claim books can teach them what men's minds will think and their hands will do. I curse the wisdom you claim to speak in my ears. Predictions are for fools, and of what I know of takers, they are meant to be observers, not prophets. They are meant to study and ponder and question. Look into my eyes and ask me if I think my family will fail the Second Age of men. Ask me! Gael stared at the thin man on his stool. Ask me! He screamed. Do you think... No! Shire take me now, I will die before my house fails the people it swore to protect. Gael. Coldor leaned forward from his frozen chair. What? Gael shouted at him. Your nose. Coldor touched his own nose as a hint. Gael reached up, confused, and felt blood above his lip. Let us talk now, while you rest in your room. We have heard you, my king. We will heed your words and summon you when we are ready to negotiate further. Coldor stood and motioned for two of his guards to help the king to his chambers. Gael waited in his room. He had calmed down, regained control of his breath and his wits, but his heart would not stop beating. Everything he knew to be true in the world was suddenly upside down and backwards. His wife had betrayed him, broken her vows, severed their souls, spit on his name, forever, in a way that would never be undone. The weight of her actions held him down as he stood in front of the door, waiting. A hand finally rapped on the wooden door. Come in. Gael straightened himself, holding the hilt of his dagger sunder behind his back, poised, calm, adrenaline coursing. The door opened and Coldor stepped in with a man that Gael had never met, and Breya,
the woman he wished he'd never met. "My king," the stranger said. He must have been Quintus's age, maybe a bit younger, an unfortunate-looking fellow with an odd-shaped nose and funny-looking teeth. "This is him?" Gael asked of Coldor. "It is." Coldor looked at him assuredly. "Gael, if you'll let me explain." "You will speak when I speak to you only, Breya." Gael cut her off with eyes like storms. Maybe he hadn't cooled off that much. "What did you see?" Gael asked the guard, stoic and still. "I saw them together." The young man looked low to the floor, somehow ashamed of what he knew. "I need to know exactly what happened. Be very specific, and go very slow." Breya's knees seemed to buckle in the agonizing interrogation. "Gael, please," she pleaded again. "Enough, my queen, I beg of you. Hold your tongue until I've asked my questions." His voice was like molten steel spilling over the edge of a blacksmith's cauldron. He pointed a sharp, dagger-like finger at the boy. "Tell me what you saw," Gael demanded. I was looking through the woods and at the northern tip of the ice drop. That's what we call the woods. I came around a thicket of trees and I saw..." Shire, bless him, the boy didn't want to finish. Gael stepped close to him, the weight of his crown tall above his head. Breya wished she didn't have eyes, and she'd pay all the gold coin in the world to have a dark room she could be in to shut away the world for a day. The young scout swallowed his spit. "I saw the queen, your wife, Queen Breya, on top of Malar Nightbringer, sire, with their hands and lips." Sunder sang from behind the king's back faster than a flash of lightning. It slipped under the boy's chin and released a flood of blood pouring down his throat as he fell at Gael's feet. The young scout kicked and spasmed, coughed and gagged on the end of his life. Breya didn't remember having the thought to scream. Her soul just shouted at her vocal cords to play an orchestra of torment and lamentation. Her eyes bled tears as she looked down at the innocent boy who had seen her sin. The cool red river swimming between his scabbed fingers. He died seconds after Sunder was back in its sheath. She reached for him, almost wishing he could take her with him for a second. "No one else knows?" Gael asked Coldor. Coldor shook his head. "Keep it that way." Gael stared at his brother by law. Coldor stood tall and glared at King Gael. "What now?" he asked, scared for the first time in his life. "Send him in." "As you wish." Coldor left, shutting the door behind him. Gael looked down at his hands and felt lightning skittering between the tiny bones. Breya looked up at him when they were alone in the room, and it was the worst pain Gael had ever felt in his life. She looked so beautiful. That's what hurt the most. It looked like she needed a hug, like she was hurting, her bowels likely twisting in guilt-ridden agony. She mouthed, "I'm sorry," over and over in wordless hysterics as Coldor threw open the door and two soldiers holding Malar scrapped and clawed to get the bushy, bearded prisoner inside the room. "I'll piss on both your heads after I snap your backs with my hammer, you frozen tryst!" Malar stamped and kicked as they forced him to stand before Gael, his king, his brother. "Stand up," Gael said, his harsh voice cutting into Breya's heart. No, was all Breya could manage as her hands dipped into the blood of the boy, cold and dead before her. "What did you do? What did you do?" "What did I do? What did you do?" Gael screamed, and a thundering storm of crashing waves and swirling tides fell from his mouth. "What did you do? What did you do?" She cowered beneath him, curling her legs into her chest, crying and shaking under his fury. Even Coldor backed up, unsure if his castle was going to explode from the vibrational surges exciting the king. Malar just reared and bucked against his restraints. Gael slowly caught his breath, heaved and hoed, Sucking in air as he recovered his rage and silenced his thought into focus. He faced Breya now, picking her up off the floor and gently guiding her against a wall in the rear of the room. You will tell no one. You will act as if nothing happened. The children will not know. No one will ever know. You will do as I say, whenever I say, for as long as I say it. With no hesitation or quarrel, because I will end your family and their castle if you whisper this to anyone. Am I clear? Gael let the storm surge again. Breya stood before her king, broken and shattered. Her legs didn't have that much strength in them, but she held herself up as best she could. I will do as you ask, always and forever, my love. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the pain I have caused you. If you please... And you... Gael turned to Malar. Coldor already had his blade, Frost, unsheathed and under Malar's neck. The punishment for treason is death in Dormouth, my king. It is the same in Arunhall, Gael said, getting within striking distance of Malar. She didn't have anything to do with it. I already... Coldor punched Malar in the chin, hard, with his free hand. Malar's head snapped back. His nose was bloody before his vision returned. Breya screamed and ran to him, but Gael stopped her with his arm on her wrist. You've comforted him quite enough, I'm told. He barked at her. Oh, Manon, curse you, you two-faced son of a whore! Malar spat at the men. I'm the husband of a whore, not the son, Malar. Stay your tongue, Gael said, cold as ice. Coldor held his blade frozen still under Malar's fiery beard. I've instructed Coldor and his men to send word that you are dead. Your lands, your titles, your name, your legends, your deeds will all slowly be erased or altered. I am not yet sure how I will change the ending of your story, but hear me now. I am not going to kill you for one very specific reason. It is because I loved you like a brother, and I don't want to... The king broke saying the words aloud for a moment. You were my brother, and I don't want to be a man who is cursed because he killed his brother. I already lost one. I don't intend on losing another to Manon, after nearly losing so many of my men and almost my wife to the... His voice broke again. Perhaps he was tired from the earlier bout beneath the frozen chair. He stepped closer to Malar. But justice must be served, and you know the price for treason is death. I will spare you death because I am a merciful king, but I banish you from Arunhall and Eldaron proper. You will forthwith live your days in Tree Down Village. You'll be placed there as their warden. Coldor said there are not many of them left after the ice troll. I think it's a perfect place for you to go and be forgotten. Do you understand my meaning? Malar struggled to stand still in front of his friend, the king, blood dripping down his nose, breath heavy in his chest. I agree with the sentence you're choosing to carry out. I believe the punishment fits the crime, Malar said, chewing on some of the sinew and blood from his nose and lip. Gael, no, was all Breya could mutter as she whimpered in his arms. Malar stood as tall as his old bones would allow. He strained his neck to look at Gael with his piercing blue bloodshot eyes. His heart was talking to Breya, though. And I'm happy to say, my king, it's a price I'm still willing to pay. Then his eyes found Breya's. It was that lovely just to kiss you once, Malar said, and felt a tear wet the red hair on his cheek. Gael stepped back and punched Malar in the face, and the world went black for the rest of that night.
The Forgotten King was created and written by Michael Stagliano. Story by Michaela Oberhofer, El Silito, Matthew Pajad, Maisie Foth, Matthew O'Connell, and Steven Stagliano. Voice narration by Kitty Liddon. Sound design and scoring by Chris Kirk. Produced by Greg Wood and Emil Hanton.